With over 21 million viewers every week, The Big Bang Theory is the second most watched TV show in America, just below Sunday Night Football. It represents the latest and greatest in a genre almost as old as television itself, the sitcom. Easier than sketch comedies, cheaper than dramas, and more popular than almost anything. It's easy to see why American television producers are so eager to produce sitcom after sitcom, year after year. Across television history, sitcoms such as I Love Lucy, The Cosby Show, Friends, and Seinfeld can be found at the top of the charts of their respective eras. But how did it all begin? In this video, I'll give you a history of the sitcom, all the way from before I Love Lucy up to The Big Bang Theory, and show you some of the unique and interesting methods of editing and filming that made the sitcom what it is today. Are you ready? Let's go.
I weigh exactly the same as I did when we were married.
I was in a fight.
A fight?
Did you win?
Yeah.
It's me.
Come on up. Hey. Bazinga.
When people think of situational comedies, they think of a genre created by and for television, but the sitcom actually predates television and has its real origins on the radio. With popular programs such as Amos and Andy, many of the first television comedies were essentially direct adaptation of the acts people heard on the radio. However, this style of sketch comedy proved difficult for television producers. These shows required new ideas, characters, and sets every week, which was expensive and time-consuming. Eventually, they hit upon the formula that we now know most sitcoms by reusing the same sets and characters every week and developing them over time. Comedies could be produced much more easily. Most of these early sitcoms were a bit awkward and couldn't really find their footing until one show struck gold and changed television forever. 1951 saw the premiere of I Love Lucy, the story of a wannabe star, Lucy Ricardo, and her Cuban-American singer-husband Ricky set the standard for nearly all sitcoms to come after it. It became the most watched show in America for 4 of its 6 seasons, and even 60 years later, in 2012, a poll run by ABC News and People magazine voted it to the best TV show of all time. But I Love Lucy did more than revolutionize the sitcom, it changed television as a whole. Before, television programs would be aired live from New York, and if they were recorded, it was done through a kinescope, which is literally just pointing a film camera at a studio monitor. Nowadays, that would be a bit like recording something by taking your camcorder and pointing it at your computer screen, and we all know how terrible that looks. But I Love Lucy was the first show to shoot using film cameras. This meant episodes were saved in their original quality, allowing for more advanced editing and, of course, that feature of sitcoms we all love to hate, reruns. I Love Lucy producer and star Desi Arnaz also invented the 3-camera technique. Rather than the old method of acting out the same scene multiple times with the camera in different places, I Love Lucy used 3 film cameras at once in front of a studio audience and cut between them in editing. This dramatically saved time and also provided a much more reliable laugh track from the audience. Some of these innovations sound almost absurd, because it's hard to imagine a TV show these days doing anything different, which really just goes to show how far-reaching I Love Lucy's influence is. And after I Love Lucy hit it big, the sitcom genre exploded. Any given year, you could find dozens of shows currently airing, the most popular of which you've probably already heard of. Appearing awkwardly in the middle of a decade dominated by westerns, the Beverly Hillbillies topped the charts in 1963 and 64. In 1968, The Andy Griffith Show ended its run at the very top of the ratings. Despite, or perhaps because of, its taboo themes, All in the Family held a 5-year streak as the most watched show in America. In 1977, Happy Days coined the term jumping the shark and enjoyed declining ratings until its cancellation in '84. Though there is one show that never quite made it to the top as a series, but its final episode in 1983 is the single most watched television episode of all time, with over 125 million people tuning in, and its innovation in the genre cannot go unrecognized. MASH. A show about a mobile army surgical hospital in the Korean War doesn't sound like your typical sitcom setting. War and death weren't subjects you could usually laugh about, but MASH did, and yet at the same time MASH handled these themes with maturity and humanity. Some people say that MASH could hardly be considered a sitcom at all. Its seriousness and dark themes also brought to attention the absurdity of a certain feature of sitcoms that no one had really stopped to think about before: the laugh track. Since radio times, the studios used a live audience or pre-recorded laughter in their broadcasts. The idea was to simulate the feeling of watching something in a crowded theater, as people did with vaudeville acts back in the day. Laughter would be recorded on magnetic tapes and then played back either live or in editing to do what producers like to call sweetening the show. For decades, this process was monopolized by one man, Charlie Douglas. Douglas would run from studio to studio with his enigmatic machine known only as the Laugh Box. Only Douglas and his immediate family members knew how to operate the machine, and only they knew what it looked like inside. It wasn't until 2010 when the mysterious Laugh Box resurfaced on an episode of Antique Roadshow that the public got to see the inner workings of the device. It was appraised at $10,000, by the way. With or without, but usually with, a laugh track, the sitcom continued to dominate the ratings. The Cosby Show stayed on top of the charts for the whole latter half of the 80s. Cheers came out on top in 1991, and Seinfeld was the most watched show in 1995 and 1998. A few years later, in 2002, TV Guide named Seinfeld the greatest TV show of all time, finally dethroning I Love Lucy. The self-proclaimed show about nothing can be seen as the beginning of the current era of sitcoms. The tropes and comedic style of Seinfeld are echoed endlessly in sitcoms today. While today's shows like The Big Bang Theory carry some inspiration from Seinfeld, the influence of even older shows like I Love Lucy are still obvious, because the truth is, in 60 years, the sitcom has not evolved all that much. TV dramas are constantly getting more cinematic and advanced. Game shows are much more complex than simple quizzes now. Meanwhile, sitcoms are still just a group of people in a fake apartment in front of 3 cameras and a studio audience talking about their problems. You can choose to interpret this relative lack of evolution in the genre any way you want. Some may choose to lament how the genre is so primitive and hasn't seen any real innovation in over 60 years. But if you're more of a traditionalist, then maybe you would say it's great that sitcoms, through things like laugh tracks and studio audiences, are keeping the old American vaudeville experience alive. Regardless, the sitcom is one of the most popular genres in TV history, and it will stay that way for quite some time. But why is the sitcom so popular? Well, the answer is pretty simple. We just love comedy. Sure, people like their dramas and their sports too, but when it comes to simple entertainment, there's nothing that people enjoy more than a good laugh. And sitcoms tickle audiences in a way that few other genres do. The characters are all sympathetic. They're people that we can understand and relate to, and the situations they're in are not too unlike the situations we find ourselves in every day. When Seinfeld says it's a show about nothing, it should really say it's a show about everything, or rather everyone. All of us, and not just Seinfeld. Every one of us can see bits of ourselves and our lives in the characters and events of all sitcoms. They invite us to take a break from our busy and stressful lives and just have a laugh at how funny or absurd life can be sometimes. Thanks for watching.